So I'm going to talk about how positioning theory might help us as teachers. Positioning theory has its origins in social psychology and sociology, but I think it has a lot to say to us about agency and autonomy. I'd like to start off in the classroom. Here we are in front of the blackboard, where students have been writing what they think would be good rules for the class. And I asked them this year to write one silly rule and a rule for the teacher, as well as rules which they thought would make a good class, and then to go around and look at each other's rules. And you can see that some students have put exclamation marks, which means, is this really serious? And students shouldn't make mistakes in class. We went back to that group and they said, yeah, we were writing that for real. We thought students shouldn't make mistakes in class. So it kind of brings us to see the difference between how students construct what their role should be in the classroom and how we are constructing that as teachers or as advisors. And so positioning theory is going to give us a tool for looking at the dialogue between those two different views of what should happen in the classroom. I'd like to do an activity, and so I'm asking for your audience participation. This activity is asking you to calibrate some different tasks which are related to the position which students take and their identity, and maybe how much risk they would be prepared to take in a class. So could you look at the following activities and rate them in terms of, is it in the comfort zone or is it outside the comfort zone? How far would it be in or out? And so 0 means it's very comfortable, and 10 means it's quite far out of the comfort zone. Would you like to shout out, please? So let's take peer editing. We're in the writing class, and I'm going to peer edit for a classmate who is somebody I know, but I don't know very well. Could you shout out, do you think it would be 0, very comfortable, or somewhere closer towards 10, quite uncomfortable?
Definitely 8.
Any
7.
other thoughts? 7, 8, any more?
7, yes.
3.
8, 9.
2.
So we're rating it quite high. And so just hold what we're using to calibrate that as quite a risky, face-threatening activity. And how about doing a presentation in front of 20 classmates?
10.
Definitely 10. Yes.
Depends how well they know the classmates.
8.
Thank you. So that's, again, that's taking quite a lot. We seem to be fairly agreed. That's quite high risk. Drawing a stick figure on the whiteboard in front of 20 classmates.
0.
2. 5.
1.
6.
2.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's keep playing. Cleaning the board for the teacher. If the teacher
0.
is
0.
0.
It's not a very cool teacher.
3.
4.
5.
And number 5, you may want to say some more about under what conditions. You're volunteering to answer in a class discussion on LGBTQ issues.
9.
9.
7, 8.
7.
8.
And thank you. Last one, answering a reading comprehension question in response to being nominated by the teacher.
5.
5.
5.
5.
7.
Thank you very much. I think I'll come back to that if we have time and ask you why. But for now, let's rock on and look at positioning. I was researching willingness to communicate, and particularly during my willingness to communicate project, COVID happened. So suddenly we were out of the real world and into this virtual world, which is hilarious in what it does to make the positioning kind of static and very teacher controlled, but in another way, it makes the positioning completely unreal. So what's happening to embodied cognition when we're online, and the people who are focused only visually are going to be experiencing something very different from the people who are in their room and kind of experiencing their room rather than the visual. So I started reading about learner emotions, and one of the things that I started reading was about emotion labor. And another thing which I came across was positioning, which is being used to look at classroom discourse or learner journal discourse. And Hayriye Kayo-Aydar has some very interesting research, which is observation-based, where she's looking at how the teacher's reaction to two talkative students created a situation where one student became very popular and another student became unpopular, partly because of the way that the teacher endorsed the talkativeness of one and didn't endorse the talkativeness of the other. So if we read this handy quote from Positioning Theory in Applied Linguistics by Kayi-Aydar, positioning has to do with how identities and power relations allow people to use language, exercise agency, and accomplish things in certain ways. We can see it's going to be quite on the point for considering autonomy. I'm very new to this, so I know that I might say the wrong thing, but I'm learning by looking at some videos on YouTube, to be honest. And so this is a model from Mary McVie, and she's looking at how the roots of positioning theory come from social psychology, and Vygotsky is there. And then it's branching up to Hayriye, who seems to be the person who is a kind of root main model for the positioning theory as Kayi-Aydar is applying it. So in Lagerhöfer and Hayriye's positioning triangle, we've got the position, which is a bit like identity, and then storyline, which is a bit like students should be quiet, students shouldn't make mistakes. It's kind of familiar saws, familiar things which get said. And then speech and other acts is the rights and the responsibilities that somebody has to act. So it's kind of the affordances in a way, in another model. First order positioning is how we want to run the movie, how if we're in our own idea of ourselves. So for example, as an autonomy producing teacher, I might walk into the classroom and ask students to be very autonomous, and students might say, well, actually, we want the teacher to be a top-down teacher. So then there's going to be some negotiation between the first order positioning and the second order positioning. A lot of humor comes from that. I was trying to find a good illustration, and I thought of Calvin and Hobbes, where we've got Calvin saying, I am stupendous man, and his friends won't accept his identity of himself as stupendous man. If we think about students, maybe a lot of students are inhibited because they think that their classmates are going to interpret speaking English as a kind of claim to be stupendous man. And so what they're afraid of is the second order positioning negotiation, which will happen when their classmates say, sorry, stupendous man, we can't let you in to the club. You're not who you claimed to be. So the classroom is a kind of place of tussle between those different positions as a good member of the group and as a person in themselves who wants to learn, maybe, and also in relation to the teacher. Here's another activity which, if we had more time, I'd like to kind of discuss or get some response about. We interviewed a student for a research project on willingness to communicate, and she said, my friends and I want to speak English in the English club, but we don't really want to speak English in class because the others will think that we're showing off. So let's discuss, is it a problem? I mean, we could shout, and I mean, for me as the teacher, it's kind of a problem. Now everybody's gone all silent. So that's a kind of replication of this very situation.
I think it might be a problem, yeah, especially if what she wants to do is improve and become a better English speaker. And because she's stopped because of her friends or her perception of what others might think of her, it could be a problem, yeah.
Thank you very much. I suppose as a teacher, it's going to make my classroom not quite what I want it to be. So it's been interesting. I was listening to other presentations which are about kind of how to create that or how to investigate that. I think that Nathan Ducker's work, where he's asking students to peer tutor each other on how they can overcome their reluctance to communicate and kind of spread from those super willing students to the less willing students, is really, really fascinating as an approach to getting deeper into this. And at the moment, I don't really have answers, I just have questions. And I think it's going to be an interesting conversation to have between teachers and people who have got more experience of advising, to say if students can bring their issues to the advising session, they're going to grow in confidence in the classroom as well, perhaps. Also, I suppose I feel that the teacher's role isn't to force people to speak out and participate. Here's another scenario, and please, when it's time to, if you can give me a 2-minute warning or a 1-minute warning.
We're actually a little over time, so
Okay.
here's your 30-second warning.
Okay, so this is about the late student, and the late student is actually a really good student, but they can't bear to position themselves, so they come in late, so they don't have any choice, I think. So it's got, the idea of positioning theory has helped me to understand that, but not necessarily solve it yet. I'm going to flash my slides so that they're on record for eternity, and if people are interested, they can pause and have a look at it later. This is original. I'm just thinking now, it seems that first order and second order positions could be considered to correspond to learner autonomy and learner agency, respectively. The first order position is my autonomous self of all the things which I could be, and the second order position is the scope that I have to actually be active when the environment will let me be active. And a talk by Rom Hayriye, which I've given a link to here, has some wonderful words in it. Positioning has 3 components: what we believe a person can do, what they actually do, and how they get from what they can do to what they actually do. And so positioning is a useful model to try and look at that. Thank you very much.